But in 1948, after the Second World War, we had an election where the Afrikaner National Party won the election. And that was the beginning of a constitutionally based system called apartheid.
Mm-hmm.
What apartheid means in Afrikaans is separateness. Apartheid, separateness. And the intention was that, you're a different ethnicity and a different culture. You should have your own areas, have your own schools, and stick to your own cultures. And we mingle when we have to through employment and through other elements. And that was the beginning of apartheid. And it obviously evolved from there to a point where in 1985, the Afrikaner national government got together, and because of international sanctions, because of demographics, and because they saw where the world was going, they decided apartheid was unsustainable. They made a conscious decision. It's not sustainable. And in 1994, having released Nelson Mandela after 27 years in jail, South Africa had its first democratic elections, and the ANC, African National Congress, swept to power. They got 80-something% of the country, which meant a lot of the white people voted for them too.
All right, Rob Hersov, this is round 2. I did not know what was going to happen to round 1, but round 1, which we did in February at Jordan Peterson's R Conference in London, I did not know much about you before you sat down with me. We did a little research. We sat down. We had a great conversation. We put the thing up. It was an interesting conversation to me. I don't know a ton about South Africa. I've learned a lot since. That video and that interview went bananas. Elon retweeted it twice. It caused South Africa to be the #1 trend on X. Subsequently, South Africa has now become a hot topic here in America. As we're taping this right now, your president is here. He was at the White House a couple of days ago. There's a lot of talk about what's going on in your country. You're an investor. You're a businessman, entrepreneur. I sort of view you as what Crocodile Dundee is to Australia. You seem like the Crocodile Dundee of your country. For those that didn't see the beginning part, let's just do a little bit of your history, and then we'll get caught up into all of the politics around what's happening in your neck of the world at the moment.
So I'm 64-year-old South African, born in Johannesburg, South Africa, 5th generation South African, born to sort of British, Scottish on my maternal side, and then Russian, Eastern European on my father's side, but a 5th generation. And I was born into real wealth in South Africa. So my grandfather and his business partner founded a mining industrial business, which in the 60s, 70s, 80s was one of the big 5 mining industrial businesses in South Africa. And I grew up I was given every opportunity in life. And I took pretty much every opportunity and made the best of it, or I believe I did. And I did schooling and university and military service in South Africa, and then came to America. Worked at Goldman Sachs, New York, Harvard Business School, worked as Rupert Murdoch's right-hand man in New York City, and then moved in the early 90s to Europe, where I had big corporate jobs, and then went out on my own as an entrepreneur. Had failure, had success, and I've been in sports, media, finance, technology, and aviation.
And you look like more a Miami guy than me at the moment. For some reason, I'm dressed in the wrong
my Miami
city.
look.
You're very much in the Miami mode right now. So I guess the first part that we should start at as it relates to your history is people hear, 5 generations in South Africa, a certain amount of people, they only associate that with one thing, which obviously is apartheid. So can you talk a little bit about that and a little bit what it was like to grow up as a white person from a wealthy family in the midst of all of that?
So, as a kid, you grow up in what you think is normal, whether it's in a communist society, in a gulag, or in an apartheid South Africa. And I grew up in real privilege, big homes, airplanes, staff. That was my life. And I went to boarding school and then university military service. But there was always this pervasive feeling that things were not right. And we'd always go Christmas holidays skiing in Switzerland or France. And, you realize even as a young child, that's something odd about your country. And at a certain point in everyone's life as a South African child.
What was it as a child that you realized? It was just a feeling, or was it literally these people are
different?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it was beyond skin color, they're being treated differently.
Correct. And the butler of our house, who was a wonderful Zimbabwean called Mr. Pete, that was his name. I'm called Mr. Rob in South Africa, by the way.
Yeah.
who I loved. I used to play football with him every day and make ice creams and things like that. And one day I wanted to go to the cinema. I must have been 9 years old. And I couldn't take him with me. And I asked my parents, why not? And they said, he's not allowed to go to the cinema with you. Those are the laws of the country. And I started crying. And, the penny drops at some point. Do you think it's normal that there are these people that are your staff, that work for you, that live in some other place, and you live with all your friends, white friends in a certain area, but do you think that's normal? But it wasn't normal, and you realize that at some point.
Can you explain some of the complexities around that? Because I think people just look back at history and they're like, oh, these people were automatically the evil ones. These people were automatically the good ones. Yeah. I suspect that you probably came from a pretty decent family and all of those things. And but that these inequities existed, and yet they're living in a system that is not a good system, but that doesn't mean they're not good people. And how did you come to grips with that? So you have this moment at 9, but now you're growing up through that.
So South Africa was only formed as a country in 1910. Prior to that, we had different provinces, different republics, and only became a union of South Africa in 1910. And before that, we had, the Great Trek, where the mainly Afrikaner farmers didn't want to be under British rule in the Cape and moved inland in their ox wagons to conquer the interior. And in many cases, they met up with the black tribes for the first time. 600 kilometers from Cape Town. And the black tribes had migrated down from East Africa over the last 1,000 years. The white arrivals, colonialists, I hate using that word because we are African, white African, arrived in 1652. And I think the Mayflower was 1620, so similar times.
Yeah.
And they
mostly from Holland.
Mostly from Holland, escaping, they were Huguenots, and they were escaping persecution by the Catholics. And they came to Georgia in the US and Louisiana and South Africa and were incredibly successful. And then the British arrived and all the other countries arrived and gold was discovered and everyone imported to South Africa. And there was a mishmash of black tribes and different, white tribes from different places. But the fundamental white tribe of South Africa is the Afrikaner. Mm-hmm. And everyone's heard that word. Yeah. It's the Afrikaner refugees arriving in America. And the Afrikaners generally...
Those 59 people that showed up that suddenly have MSNBC freaking out. Yeah.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah. Are there more coming? Is that official? Yeah.
Yeah, more coming.
Yeah.
But, everybody freaks out. But they're the original white tribe of Africa. And then we Anglos are the other white tribe of Africa. And so South Africa's had wars. We've had chaos. We've had cooperation. We've all worked together. But in 1948, after the Second World War, we had an election where the Afrikaner National Party won the election. And that was the beginning of a constitutionally based system called apartheid. Mm-hmm. What apartheid means in Afrikaans is separateness, apartheid, separateness. And the intention was that, you're a different ethnicity and a different culture. You should have your own areas, have your own schools, and stick to your own cultures. And we mingle when we have to through employment and through other elements. And that was the beginning of apartheid. And it obviously evolved from there to a point where in 1985, the Afrikaner national government got together and because of international sanctions, because of demographics, and because they saw where the world was going, they decided apartheid was unsustainable. They made a conscious decision. It's not sustainable. And in 1994, having released Nelson Mandela after 27 years in jail, South Africa had its first democratic elections, and the ANC, African National Congress, swept to power. They got 80-something% of the country, which meant a lot of the white people voted for them too. Mm-hmm. And only Cape Town and the Western Cape, this little strip down in the bottom corner of Africa, did not vote for the ANC and never has. And when you look at South Africa, somebody asked me, is it a geographic or a management problem? The geography issue is that it is twice the size of France, South Africa. It's huge. And the Western Cape has nothing to do with KZN, has nothing to do with Mpumalanga. I think there are 26 languages. There are 12 national languages, 26 different languages. The white tribe is made up of the Anglos and the Afrikaners. The black tribes have got 15, it's Tswana, Zulu, Xhosa, Sotho. Then there are the people of Indian extraction. And then there's a group called the Coloreds. And the colored people are the mix of the blacks and the white people. So South Africa is geographically confusing and ethnically and culturally confusing. It shouldn't be one country.
So as apartheid was falling apart, and you're in a family that, if I don't know if you agree with this word, is benefiting from that system and that culture, was your family fighting against it? I mean, did everyone sort of realize, I guess you sort of referenced this, but did everyone sort of realize this is going to end one way or another, and it's either going to end extremely poorly or we're going to have to kind of let it go?
Yes. So there was always democracy. The whites had the vote under apartheid, and only the whites. And the parliament was made of only white people. But there was a vigorous opposition. Harry Oppenheimer, the richest South African by far, who created De Beers and Anglo-American, and was of Jewish extraction from Europe, he was vocal in standing up against the national government. And an incredible Jewish woman, Helen Suzman, was in parliament as the main voice against the National Party and against apartheid. So there were a lot of people who voted against the national government, stood up against apartheid, and in many cases, the Jewish South Africans were the most prominent in fighting against apartheid, which is an anathema, because if you think of how anti-Semitic the ANC is now,
right,
or anti-Israel, it's ridiculous, because the Jews were great supporters of bringing down apartheid.
We got our own version of that with the Democrats now.
Exactly.
Right, it was the Jews marching with Martin Luther King, and
insane. So 1994, Mandela gets released, democracy rules, and from 1994 to about 2008, everything worked wonderfully. This was called the Rainbow Coalition. You know, there were whites, blacks, colors, and Indians in positions of power. It was a meritocracy. Our country grew at 3%, 4%, 5% economic growth a year. 500,000 jobs were added every year in that period. And the country was working. You know, there was investment, and the world basically said, look what we've done. We've saved South Africa from a horrible future. We've been successful. Well done, South Africa. And then they looked the other way. The world turned to look for the next thing to solve. And from 2008, a man called Jacob Zuma came to power, followed by Cyril Ramaphosa.
Right.
And then the rot really set in.
If you're looking for more eye-opening and worldly conversations, make sure to dive into our international playlist. And if you want to watch full interviews on a wide variety of topics, watch our full episode playlist, all right over here. And to get notified of all future videos, be sure to subscribe and click the notification bell.